on your right hand. I want to talk about your technique. I mean, your playing is so unique, and this is just one aspect of why it's unique. And you have a number of different styles of the way you use your right hand. Can you talk about those first?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I started playing like that because I was always seeing my father playing classical guitar back then. I started when I was around 10 years old. At that time, he was playing a lot of classical guitar, so I just thought that every guitar was meant to be played with fingers, you know. I didn't know that you should use a pick for electric and fingers with classical. So I started with that technique because, you know, my first influences were actually electric players. So I actually started with the electric and then studied a little bit of classical guitar later on.
Now, were you playing on your dad's guitars?
Yeah, actually, my first guitar was a Strat. It was a little Squier Strat guitar, the cheap ones.
Yeah.
But it felt like the best guitar for me because I fell in love with Hendrix music and it was playing a Strat, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, then a lot of the traditional 70s rock bands like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin. I fell in love with that kind of music. And I first started playing with this kind of bass technique because it felt more comfortable to me, I started playing basically like that. And the first thing I noticed when I first started was the tone was so much different. Like I was hearing on the records this strong attack and
right. The pick attack.
The pick attack, yeah. And I realized that in order to achieve that kind of sound with fingers, you need to have nails.
Yeah.
So that it's a kind of rule that I discovered through years of practicing, of course, that you need to have nails in order to achieve that kind of tone. Even for electric guitar, I'm saying. The thing is, you don't have to grow, long nails for the electric guitar because the strings are closer to each other if you compare them to, a classical guitar, of course.
Yeah.
So I think that is way more comfortable to me is to have like very short nails on my right hand, so they get on the string in an easier way, I think. So that was my kind of first rule. So I started to playing, this kind of lines. This kind of 2 note per string pentatonic stuff. I learned it that way. And I honestly didn't know about legato in the first days. So every note was picked. Yeah. So I started to, experiment with this kind of stuff. And I think when I first discovered the first virtuoso players, some of the things I was hearing were not possible with only this technique.
Who were these virtuoso players you're talking about?
The first one was Eddie Van Halen.
Yep.
It was the first one, we all know Eruption, and we all know Eddie. And it was the first one where I honestly thought, okay, I'm never gonna able to do this. Was the first one that I thought, okay, I'm never gonna do this kind of stuff. And then I discovered Eric Johnson, and he's still one of my favorite players. I mean, Eric is a master of the fretboard, he's a master of the guitar. And, I learned a lot of stuff from them. And Eddie, kind of introduced me to the shred kind of playing. Even if I don't consider myself a shredder, but it was that kind of word to me. And then, all the different influences. As I said, I started as a rock and roll guy, but I also have a strong jazz influence. So through the years, I listened to really a lot of players, a lot of different players. So I would say from the technical playing side, Eric Johnson and Eddie Van Halen were the first.
Just wanted to take a quick break to let you know that my channel is self-funded, and if you want to see more interviews like this, think about becoming a member of the Beato Club. That's how I help support bringing in guests and traveling to do remote interviews. Link in the description. Thanks. In Italy, you're from Sicily.
Yeah.
Where do you hear these players? Was this something your dad was listening to, or are these things that you just heard from your friends?
Yeah, I think I consider myself pretty lucky because I came from a musical family. Everyone is interested in music in a way. So my father plays the guitar. He's also a guitar player, and he kind of was a listening guide to me, especially the first years. And it was like he kind of introduced me to all the people from the past generations. So I was really passionate about Van Halen, as I said, and he always said to me, you know, but Van Halen didn't invent everything. You know, you should listen to Jimmy Page. You should listen to Wes Montgomery. You should listen to Django, and it was kind of got me back in the past.
Yeah,
it was really useful because I actually discovered that a lot of stuff that we interpret as new sometimes are just like a reinterpretation of something old. And I now have a really strong jazz influence because of that, because I got through the past, I listened to all of these players. I'm a big fan of Django's music. You know, a lot of the guys, even from the 80s, like Pat Metheny, George Benson, Wes Montgomery, of course, is an incredible player. So I always try to mix up these things. And that was because of my father. He was actually my very first listening guide, rather than a teacher.